Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we're going to make a Mother's Day and Father's Day card using the same set of stamps from our sponsor, artneco.com. This is the 50 State Birds and Flowers set. It's a beautiful set. It is 6 unmounted sheets, full-size sheets, and it contains 54 stamps. These are artist trading card size stamps, so if you like to do artist trading cards, it's brilliant for that, but I think they're beautiful on cards as well. So this is what I do when I have these big unmounted sheets. I'm afraid if I cut them apart, I might lose them, plus I'll have to go through the expense of adding mounting foam. So this way I just keep them together. I ink up what I want flat, and then I put my paper on top and put a scrap on top of that and just wipe over it with my hands. That gives me a perfect impression every time, and I just simply trim off the excess marks from the surrounding stamps and it works perfectly. So I like to do that first and then color them at the same time. Before I begin coloring though, I like to choose my papers because it's so much easier to color to match paper than it is to find paper to match what you've colored afterwards. So I decided on this beautiful tea party set from American Crafts. I love the vintage themes with the bright colors, and then I chose a Tim Holtz kind of rustic paper pad for my Father's Day card. I'm going to start off with a Mother's Day card because I like bright colors, and using a real brush pen. You could use any water-based marker though, it does not matter. I'm going in and just throwing in some dark colors. Now this is a very loose and sloppy coloring job that I'm going to do here, but it's still going to turn out beautifully. If you want to take more time, if you want to use alcohol pens and really go to town on coloring this, feel free. I just wanted to kind of get a more of a everybody can do this loose, easy breezy coloring job. So after I've put on a couple shades of color, I like to go over it with my Stella pen. That's a glimmer pen, and not only does it blend your colors a little bit, it leaves a subtle sheen on top. Whenever I'm using water-based markers and I don't have exactly the color I need, I just scribble my marker out on a scrap of plastic packaging. You can see that little scrap in the corner of my my screen there. And then I just use another marker or a blending pen or a Stella pen to pick it up. And that just gives me those in-between colors that I don't have a marker for. So for the water, I wanted kind of like a greenish teal color, so I scribbled out my kind of tealy blue color and picked it up with a very pale green, and I'm able to put in my watercolor that way. It saves money because you don't have to have every single marker out there, and it saves space on your table. And you know, a lot of times we're stamping and we're coloring, we're out somewhere with friends, we don't want to carry 200 markers with us, so it just works. It works all the way around. I'm throwing in some pink little lilies, I guess they're lilies, water lilies, in the picture, and I'm trying to match the pinks and yellows that are on my paper. So that's why I have my stack of paper there. You can kind of see it in the background because I'm trying to match everything. Now I can go over any of those lighter areas, so you don't have to be really clean when you color the water, and I can go in and put those darker lily pads in. So I try to do light to dark sometimes, especially when I have a lot of small, tightly packed images that I'm trying to color, because it makes it quick and easy and not very fussy. And I'm not a big fan of fussy coloring. There's a lot going on in this picture, so so you want to try to save a little time where you can. And again, I'm going over everything with that Stella pen because it just gives it a beautiful sparkle. Now, I'm using Nina cardstock, and that's not my favorite with water-based media, but the one thing I do like about this is that it grabs that ink so quickly that when I go to brush over it with the Stella pen, like on the water, after all that marker's dry, I can glaze over it with the glitter, and it doesn't smudge my images. But if I do it really quick after I've just put down the color, I can blend my images slightly together. If you're doing this on watercolor paper or Bristol board, you're going to get a blend, so you wouldn't want to just go willy-nilly. You'd want to, do one color at a time. So just keep that in mind if you are working. Now again, to get my really subtle colors for the swan, I scribbled my marker on the plastic packaging and picked up the color with my Stella pen, and then just brought it over. Otherwise, it would be way too dark for this, and my swans would no longer be white. They'd be like hot pink and bright purple, and that's not what I want for my swans. I mixed colors to make the beaks. I first colored them with a yellow pen, and then I went over with my pink that I used on the lilies, those same two lily colors, and that gave me a beautiful orange that happened to match everything else because I used the same colors. Now all you have to do is trim that, and we can make the card. Since I've been kind of obsessed with these distressed oxide inks, I thought I'd try them for stamping today, and I found this beautiful sentiment. It's Happy Mother's Day from the Victorian Silhouette Sets from artneco.com. It's another beautiful stamp set. And I'm stamping it on a scrap of yellow paper that was from this paper pad after I cut down my panel for the card, and then I just die cut it out. I'm using my homemade ink blender tools to ink the edges, and I like to hold it up and ink it this way because you just get a really subtle blush of color on the edges. You can ink it a little bit more, like set it down on scrap paper and ink it more vigorously, which you'll see me do on this panel here. But honestly, I have to say that I prefer the more subtle inking I get when I hold my paper up and just do the edges. But you could do whatever you want to do. You can use color dusters if you want more of a softer look, or whatever blending tool you happen to like. I like my homemade ones, but to each his own. And now, because I thought that that blue was a little bit too soft, I'm just using a direct-to-paper technique to give a little bit of that brown ink on the edges. And now I just like to play with my arrangement a little bit here. I'm using a cream 5x7 card base, and so my back panel is cut to 4 3/4 by 6 3/4, and then I'm just kind of laying my stuff out and figuring out how I want to lay down these big shapes on my card first. I like to do that before I play with little embellishments because it's kind of like trying to fit rocks in a jar. You put in your biggest stones, then you put in your medium-sized stones, then your pebbles and your sand, so you can get everything to fit. So once that's glued down, I can start playing with embellishments. I thought because I'm using these bird stamps, I would use a feather as one of my embellishments. I actually have like a big bucket of feathers I use in my kids' classes, but they're kind of fun once in a while because you can kind of see the elements that are behind them as well. So it kind of gives you a way to tie elements together, because if you just stick a couple like buttons down or embellishments down, they can kind of float and look a little discordant. This kind of bridges and clusters things together and makes them look a little bit more unified. You could do that also with like a lacy die cut. That would be another great way to unify things. A swirl would go really well there, for instance. And then I'm just using some embellishments that I made in the past that I found when I was cleaning my craft room, and I'm just gluing those down as well. And that's pretty much it for that card. I think it looks fantastic, and I think it makes a really lovely Mother's Day card. Now for the Father's Day card, I found it a little more challenging because I was actually kind of tired by the time I worked on this. In this paper, I always found hard to work with, so I never used it. This is the Tim Holtz paper. One thing I loved is that they had a postcard for every state, a pattern paper with a mini postcard for every state. So the state bird of Minnesota is a loon, so I thought I'd take that Minnesota postcard, glue it to a piece of cardstock, and cut it out with postage edge scissors to make an embellishment. Now, I probably could have done the Maine one too, because we have lots of loons in Maine, but I thought I would just keep it kind of authentic. But I love paper like that you can cut apart and get a bunch of embellishments from because, well, I'm cheap and I like to stretch my supplies as much as I can, but that's just a really great way to use it, and it's also flat and easy to mail. So I'm just kind of, again, laying down the big parts. I haven't colored my image yet. We'll get to that soon. I almost threw this card away, I have to be honest. I had such a rough time coloring this, but I'm going to take you through it and tell you why I had a difficult time and what I would do differently. So the first thing I would have done differently would be to have changed the cardstock or changed my coloring medium. I'm using Neenah cardstock, which is one of my favorites for alcohol pens, but not so much for water media. What I'm doing here is I've scribbled my clean color water-based markers onto a scrap of plastic packaging, just like I did with the other image, and I tried subtly coloring my sky using a blender pen. It worked all right, but my color was dragging and sticking. So then I thought, well, I'll just use a dark gray and I will color the body of the loon. It's not looking good so far, but I figured, well, I can always darken it up. There I went a little sloppy with the beak and made it a little too big, and here I'm just loosely trying to color in the flowers and the grasses, and I have to tell you, at this point, I'm thinking, you know what? It's time to restamp this on a different paper and start over. What am I doing? What a mess. But I actually decided to stick it out, and I figured, well, I'm going to throw this away anyway. I might as well just stick it out and see what I can do. So I'm just throwing in color really sloppily at this point. So I'm basically trying to get any broad colors in that I want, and I think, well, why don't I figure out how to get those spots back on the loon? So I'm using a white gel pen. This is a Uniball Signo. It's my favorite white gel pen because it's so opaque, and that way I figured if I do that, then I can go in with some darker colors, which I did with a black marker. But I decided to give it up and come back to it the next day, and that's when I grabbed up the colored pencils. So these are just Color Soft color pencils. You can use whatever ones you have. It really doesn't matter, but I like a wax base pencil for this because they're more opaque, meaning I can go over the big honking mess I made with the markers and kind of pull it together. So since I had those dark colors in there, just by going with a slightly lighter shade of these colors, I can pull out blades of grass, I can color the red eye and the loon where I put the white gel pen before, and I can smooth out the sky by using a colored pencil. So much easier to work with. And since I had that base of color already, I didn't have to worry about filling in the tooth and doing all that jazz. I trimmed out my image and did ink it with some kind of pale green ink before I left last night, and I'm actually pretty happy with this. So now I can layer everything together and make a card that's halfway decent. Because the pattern paper I was using, when I'm using a pad of paper, I try to pull everything from that stack, but everything was so brown in that Tim Holtz stack that I thought maybe I'll grab some washi tapes and be able to pull out a little bit more color, and that's what I did here. These tapes are from different companies, different brands. It doesn't really matter because they're slightly translucent. You can lay them down and see underneath, and it kind of makes everything mix and match a little bit better because you're seeing some of those underlying papers. So that's my big tip, is that if you just want to add some color and pattern, use washi tape. It will automatically go with what you have as long as your colors are reasonably close because you have the stuff underneath to kind of show through. So I'm using some foam tape to stick this main panel down to give it a little more dimension, and now I'm just playing with some metal embellishments that I had in my stash. I think gears are always a safe bet for a Father's Day card. Also a little pocket watch type charm I thought looked really nice. And then I'm just using some strong glue. This is my Helmar 450. Beacon 3-in-1 also works really well. They're not stinky, but they hold really well to stick everything down. And I'm just using the pen so I don't get the glue all over my fingers. That's really the only reason for that. And there you have it. We've got 2 cards done, one for Mother's Day, one for Father's Day, using the same set. That's what I love about this set. It's so versatile. It is a little pricey because it's so many stamps, but you can buy each stamp individually if that's all you want. Have a look over at artneco.com. Mention the Frugal Crafter when you order to save 10% or get free shipping on your order over 50, whichever discount is greater. And I thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up. Until next time, happy crafting.